Hello, listeners, and welcome to Privacy Chats with Rachel and John, a podcast for privacy professionals and enthusiasts alike. I'm Rachel.
And I'm John. So we're your hosts today, and we're going to step into the intersection of privacy and cybersecurity. We often focus just on privacy, but we're going to kind of step outside of our boundary a little bit and talk about one of the most prevalent forms of social engineering. But before we start, as always, I just want to share that the information shared throughout this episode is our own. It's not in any way affiliated with our employers or any other organizations. These episodes are produced on our own time. They're based on our own research and professional opinions.
Yes, sir. Now, getting back to our topic, social engineering. So this topic actually takes me back to a fantastic book I read a couple years back called The Art of Deception, if anyone is familiar. I upon reading it, I wasn't even sure when it was written, but apparently it is from 2001 or 2002 by
Okay.
an astound Kevin Mitnick, who I, especially after reading the book, would coin as kind of like the pioneer of social engineering.
Sure.
But he's an ethical hacker who, probably was too good at his job at one point before becoming a professional consultant, pressing large organizations and even being wanted by the FBI at some point for how good he was at, social engineering and kind of human hacking.
Yeah, I think he spent time in jail, actually. So,
Yeah, that was, I mean, it's a very interesting career if anyone wants to go on a Wikipedia wormhole, but I'll use his definition to kick off this episode of the podcast. And he described social engineering in using the influence and persuasion to deceive people by convincing them that the social engineering question is someone he or she is not, or, through manipulation. And as a result, the social engineer is able to take advantage of people to obtain more information or, and this can be without the use of technology or it can be with. He's, had cases of both.
Yeah, I agree. And that's actually a great definition. I'm not sure I've read that specific definition, but and I think for me, social engineering covers a very broad range of attacks. So in my mind, anything that attempts to trick you or influence you in a manipulative way to cause you to do something different than you would have otherwise done could be considered as a social engineering cyber attack.
So it is quite broad. So I'm wondering examples of this. Like, could it even be something as, simple as me seeing a commercial that shows pictures of animals being just mistreated and asking me for money and calling a phone number? Does that count in this case?
It's a good analogy, I guess. I think it's a great point, and I think that sometimes there's a really fine line between marketing and manipulation. So what you're describing are kind of savvy marketing techniques. So I would say that influential marketing is not, as long as it's not deceptive or nefarious. Um, but I know that you care about dogs and cats that are four-legged
I
friends, so it's okay to
would call the
support
phone
them.
number. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. But to draw a comparison to marketing strategy, I think there's something there. So Russia was found to have actually interfered with the 2016 U.S. elections using social media posts. And something that I read said that they sought to sow division among the public, and ultimately to manipulate people into thinking a certain way, and that thinking then influenced how they would vote. And I think that is nefarious, manipulative, exploitive. It's just wrong. So I think that is a form of social engineering, although some people would say it was marketing. We're just using social media marketing. And in reality, their tactics were so effective that a lot of people who were manipulated in 2016 still don't even realize that they were.
That certainly doesn't make the situation any easier. I knew at the time before the results were announced, going back to that election analogy, even some of the most doubtful, when I say doubtful in conservative, I mean doubtful, polls and journalists at the time had claimed something a sub 30% chance of Trump winning, yet it happened through, I mean, kind of right under our eyes, right? Perception's really powerful and social media will generally amplify consensus and will drown out dissenting viewpoints through that. So it's tough. That effect will cascade into fringes of a group and then it'll turn into results. So I certainly see the effects of social engineering at a lot of different scales here. We just talked about puppies and animals. Now we're going on to election. But what specific type of social engineering do you want to hammer on today?
So I wanted to focus on this one because, when I thought of it, I think we can't just do all of it. So we might do other episodes on different types of
Yeah.
social engineering. So we'll see. But today I want to focus on impersonation scams. It's a special form of social engineering. It covers a lot of areas that we'll get into here. They're sometimes called imposter scams.
Yeah. So impersonating someone to get probably an outcome information, who knows that, you believe you're giving to someone who isn't who they say they are. Kind of like a what's a good analogy? Like pretending to be Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny for your kids on those
I mean,
holidays. Like, does this count?
well, I don't know. There's nothing nefarious about that. I enjoyed pretending to be Santa Claus for many years and ate the cookies and stuff. It was great. But yeah, I guess like anything where somebody's pretending to be someone that they're not, in order to achieve a nefarious outcome. And I was looking research for this episode. USA.gov offers some examples to include government imposter scams. And two of them they specifically focus on are ones related to the IRS and ones related to Social Security. There's charity scams, there's grandparent scams that we'll talk about here in a minute. There's tech support scams. Scammers can also pretend to be from your bank or a company you do business with or something. And just today, before we came on to record this, I saw on Facebook somebody that I know said, my account has been hacked.
Oh no.
Don't take any friend requests from me, which is interesting. Their account was likely not hacked, but what likely happened is somebody else created a different account that looks like
Yeah.
theirs and is now trying to make friends with their friends, to try and take advantage of them. And we'll kind of get into that in a minute. So those are that's kind of a list of different types of imposter scams, or so that we're going to talk about here.
Yeah. I mean, given that last example, the Facebook one, I know our listeners and myself can already name off a few people that we know who have either been victim, have been involved, have witnessed this. So it's a very familiar topic, I think. With that, where do you want to start?
So I don't want to go into specific scams for this, because if we focus on a particular scam, then people might say, okay, I'm going to avoid that. But really, I think it's better if people are educated, so that if they understand the characteristics of a scam, then even new types of them that come up, they'll be ready to deal with. Okay, so this is mostly my list, but I think you'll probably find them in other places. But the telltale signs of a scam are usually that something that comes to you that's unexpected. Whatever the message is, it could be a text or an email or a phone call or something. It's going to try and create some sense of urgency about what's happening. And it's usually going to come from a person or entity that is generally viewed, probably by you, as having respect or authority. And like I mentioned, the grandparent thing that we'll get into. So that's somebody that you respect, and they, I guess, do have authority. They're ultimately going to ask for you to do something, or to reveal information, or to provide something of value. There's some sort of action involved there, and they often will attempt to leverage an emotion. Okay, and the last thing I want to point out is if you ever find yourself buying a gift card because somebody has asked you to, it's a scam, 100% scam, unless it's your actual child is in your presence saying, "Mommy, I want a gift card for something." It's a scam. So yeah.
I'm giggling because you made that its own bullet, which is absolutely valid. I mean, that'll weed out so many different scams without even looking at the rest of them. But one of those I want to double down on is the fact that you can leverage emotion to succeed in these sort of scams. Can you tell me how that could work in practice?
Yeah, let me give you a couple. So one of the scams that USA.gov listed was what they call the grandparent scam. So in this scam, a thief will contact someone, often a grandparent, claiming to be their grandchild or a friend or a relative, and then they're going to say that they're in some sort of a peril, and it doesn't matter what it be. So they need immediate assistance. So they might say that they were traveling and they got mugged, or I lost my wallet, or I was in a car accident, or I was arrested and don't tell my mom, but I really need help, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to create that. It's all of those things. It's unexpected. It's a sense of urgency and stuff like that. So there's an advisory that I found from the Federal Communication Commission that indicated that fraudsters will often quickly try and transfer the person to someone else. So they'll say, "Hey, I need you to talk to my lawyer," or "There's a police officer right here, why don't you talk to them?" Or
Very
they're
smart.
going to transfer. So now they're moving away from talking to the grandchild or the friend or the family member to another person of authority. So then the scam will continue. So the critical part of the scam is really the beginning. getting the victim to accept the premise that their loved one needs help. And once they accept that, and it's really easy to do that, that triggers the emotion. That's all, and that's all that's needed. And like now you're in it, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to help my friend, grandchild, whatever it is. So so the emotion there that's being manipulated is love.
Yeah, and it seems like what else is in common here is that trying to save a loved one, get them out of trouble. I would be put in a fight or flight response immediately, and I know that when you're in that state, our actions or our interpretations of our surroundings have to be made very quickly. Like judgment calls have to be quick, without effort, in order to get what you need to get done, regardless of whether or not you could take a step back and say, hey, I'm not even sure this is who they say they are. Like you'll act without thinking, essentially.
Yeah, but I think that's the lesson that I think we're trying to convey in this episode
Absolutely.
is don't. You want to wait. So another emotion that's often used is fear. So fraudsters will reach out and they'll pretend to be an IRS agent, saying there's a mistake in your tax filings, and you're going to go to jail. Like the police are on their way. They're going to try and instill a sense of fear that you're going to be arrested, that you're going to lose your benefits. Someone might call from your bank and claim that your assets are at risk, or even something silly like Amazon. They might pretend to be Amazon, saying that your latest purchase isn't going to go through, your package isn't going to come. Like, oh, so
Yeah, all reasonable sources, right? Like and you can totally pair, being the fraudster, pair information that you might know about a person to make these
right,
scams more convincing. And also just fear is a crazy tactic here because it's universal. I mean, much like the emotional inclination is, but these are very core and root characteristics of
yeah.
human beings, and part of what's probably made us successful for all of these years is that we know how to quickly respond and diagnose and act on a given situation, especially with high impact. So it is quite amazing how this is turned full circle into using this against each other, and how these examples can occur in a very seemingly benign way, but can have great impact.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Agreed. So, and the last example, and again, these are just examples because other emotions that might be leveraged, but the last one I want to offer is trust. People will manipulate your trust. I don't know if that's an emotion, but that and as an attribute of a person. So, and the best example I can offer for that are just, and we've all seen them, is a pop-up that comes up in your computer screen telling that you have a computer virus. And you call this number, call that number. I almost guarantee you that you're going to be talking to a fraudster. And they're going to claim that they're from Microsoft or some other company, and they're helping you. That they're not. It's a scam.
Yeah,
They're ultimately just going to walk you down a path that is we'll get into some of the outcomes, but it's not going to be good for you.
for sure. And I mean, that's one case where it doesn't even involve an actor or an institution. It's on perception. Of course, there's
Yeah,
someone nefarious on the other side, but I'm looking at my computer thinking this was pre-programmed into my operating system, and this is
right.
something that my provider would have anticipated popping up, and I don't even stop to question it because I'm not thinking
Trust.
about being scammed by another person, right? I trust my machine.
Yeah.
But
Right.
what are they trying to accomplish? What should we anything else we should be on the lookout for?
Well, so, I don't want to be declarative about that, but generally they're looking for money, but not always. Sometimes they'll look for something else. So let's pretend for a second that you work for a company. We'll call it ABC Corporation, and you're already savvy about social engineering scams because you listen to people like us that teach you about it. So in this situation to not trust emails from unknown sources. So now you get an email message from, let's say, Bob at abc.com. So it's the company that you work for, and they say that they're from human resources and there's some sort of a problem. So, but because the email came from within your company, you're likely to trust it. It's coming from a trusted source. But what you don't know is that Bob fell for some other social engineering scam that tricked him into divulging his password. And now that you're really emailing a fraudster who's using Bob's actual real email address within your company. So now Bob's email account is going to be used to victimize a whole bunch of other people. But Bob wasn't a victim for money. They didn't take any money from him. They just took his credentials and then are using them. So he was probably tricked into divulging his password, or he might have just started off with a bad password, We can talk about passwords in maybe a different episode. But you know, that's just kind of one example of somebody that wasn't after money from Bob in this example.
Yeah,
And they're going to
and
use,
for sure, I
yeah,
can
go
see
ahead.
those strategies playing off and on to each other. Like I said, more information makes these social engineering attacks more convincing or less likely to ask someone to pause and think before they act.
Right.
And that whole scenario that you mentioned, I mean, that totally can apply to social media. I've heard instances of, like you said, my friends being hacked.
Yeah.
And you know, that being a taken over account is a very wonderful example. I know that there's folks in my age group that know about the crypto scheme where there will be some post about, you know, a story of, hey, like join my crypto club, start in, pay this
Yeah.
much money, and it's a totally taken over account that will try to replicate that it's same
Hmm.
attack through that network of friends, just like you know, any good social engineering scam. I imagine that it spreads like a fire throughout a network, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that's the intent, right?
but how do they actually come after your money in these cases is what I'm wondering now.
So usually they're looking for non-traceable forms of currency.
Like what I can imagine a few gift cards. I mean, I mentioned crypto, but again, I don't use
Yeah.
crypto. I don't really know how it works.
Well, that's a perfect segue. I love that, Rachel. So really the best example of non-traceable currency is cash. So if I give you a $20 bill, you know, once you have it, that can't be traced back to me. It's non-traceable. So, but the problem with cash is that in order for fraudsters to use it, they have to actually the cash actually has to change hands. It's a physical form of currency. So, you know, they have to trick you into sending it to them or bringing it to them or something. So that kind of creates a problem for them.
Yeah.
Um,
Going back to
go ahead.
crypto, you said that sounds like it's the whole ethos of crypto, right? Like you
Eh,
can anonymously share monetary value.
Yeah, so crypto is famous for being like its biggest use case. I don't know that that's true, but one of the larger use cases for crypto is for crime, and it's because it's not traceable. But so it's very common in large scale ransomware attacks, like you know fraudsters or you know cyber criminals who are attacking a big company, and you know you're talking about attacks of hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. They're going to use cryptocurrency as a method of payment for things like ransomware attacks, which again, whole different episode. Let's not go into that here. But it's problematic for the small scale social engineering types of things because, like you said, you don't know how to buy crypto or to set up an account. So it would take you a while to go over that learning curve. So the process to set up the account, figure out how to use it, transfer the funds, get it up and running, it's just going to take a delay. So crypto is actually not the most common form of currency used in small scale social engineering attacks, which is really what we're talking about here today.
Interesting. So, I mean, the alternatives to that, I mean, they would have to be something like credit, some type of card payment, right?
So card
I assume
payments,
it's
and I
digital
think
a lot of times.
it's got to be digital. So credit cards don't work for criminals because credit card companies actually know who's on both ends of the transaction. So if they find out something was fraudulent, it's easy for them to pull the funds back. And you kind of nailed it earlier. The preferred method of payment for almost all of these small scale social engineering scams is gift cards, and like the most popular ones, and I'm not sure why, are from Target, Google Play, Apple, eBay, Walmart, and Amazon. And another one are, you know, see at the checkout register in your grocery store, those prepaid Visa cards or MasterCards that you can buy at the register. Those are all popular to use
Yeah.
for these scams.
I assume just because they're so widely available, and probably if you're not aware of the scam, trustworthy, like, oh, you need, I'm assuming haven't been scammed this way, but need an Amazon
Yeah.
gift card, really presumptuous and common. But unless you're paying with cash to get these gift cards, couldn't they also be traced just like credit cards through, I don't know, statement information, where you actually made purchases?
So like yeah, so they actually don't care if it's traced back to you because you know you bought it and sent it to them.
Mhm.
But I looked that up because I can anticipate some of your questions here, Rachel. We've been doing this for long enough now. So I found an article on aura.com that kind of listed some of the characteristics. They said that gift cards are readily available and easy to buy, that they can be treated as cash, that scammers can easily sell the gift cards online. So once they sell it to somebody else, now it's going to be traceable to the person that they sold it to.
Mm.
Um, the gift cards, they can't be refunded or traced or disputed in most cases, which I have to wonder why. Like that's got to be a business problem for Target. Like if I bought a gift card and I wanted to bring it back to Target, I
Mhm.
would be like, what? Anyway, but also gift cards can be used to buy cryptocurrency. So like we said, cryptocurrency is the perfect digital currency. And if they get a gift card and can buy cryptocurrency with it, then it's completely not traceable. And then, gift cards aren't tied to an individual account at all.
Right.
That's just, yeah.
Do you have any other examples of fraud in this way in general? Because I'm trying to paint the whole picture for myself.
So yeah, there's there's so many of these. So let's go back to the ABC Corporation and assume that they have information on their website about who the heads of each of the departments are. Okay, so a fraudster can easily look that up, and then they can go to the company's social media page and look for posts or comments or something from other people. So they can kind of, do social engineering and learn kind of the lay of the land and the environment and who's who in the zoo kind of thing. So through this, they can learn what's happening at the company. They can learn who's there. Then they can pretend they can. So let's say that let me pick a name like Sam Malone is the head of a department. So now they can go out and create an email account on Gmail that's smalone.abc.com@gmail.com. Right. So it looks
Yeah.
like Sam Malone's actual corporate email address, and then they can reach out to contacts that they found on the social media site for the company. And then all they have to do is to get the person who receives that message to think, even for a moment, that they're actually communicating with the real Sam Malone.
Mhm.
And from that point on, they'll often kind of switch over to a text thread. So they'll say, hey, like the email will introduce them as Sam. And they'll say, hey, I can't email right now because of dot dot dot, and
Yeah.
I'm going to shoot you a text, or send me your phone number and I'm going to send you a text message. So now they've
Presumably to
moved
get
the
off the
communication.
site that they can
Right.
identify that, hey, wait, this is at Gmail. This is at something else at
Exactly.
Gmail.
Right. So now they've created this text thread back and forth, and they'll have this conversation with you through text. And I've actually done this just because I was curious where these fraudsters would go with it, and
Yeah.
I've had fun with them a couple of times. I don't recommend people do that, but I'm a
John's just
professional,
making
so
friends. Some
exactly right.
scammers.
But what they'll do is they'll walk you down whatever road that they think that you'll go down to ultimately, get tricked into sending them gift cards. And
Mhm.
they'll come up with the most outrageous things. So I don't want to get into too many examples about that. But, another example is they can do a similar thing, create a fake email address that pretends to be the pastor of your church or a charity that you support, or, some foundation
Probably
that
publicly
protects
available
animals.
information, right?
Exactly. That's the social engineering part of it. And then reach out pretending to be that person, and then have some sort of an urgent need. Like we've got, somebody that really needs help, and I need you to help me to help them.
Mhm.
So the last example that I'll offer for this is, and I've seen a lot of these recently, I've actually received a lot of them, is you get a text message that claims to be from either the US Postal Service or UPS saying, hey, I have a package for you and we have some problem with delivering it. And
Yeah,
we,
I've
we
seen those
need you to reach
too.
back. Yeah, that's.
But I mean,
Oh, do you
what do we
really
do
think that
about
that's
it?
from the post office?
Yeah, it's like there's not much to do, but I imagine not responding, right? Because my package will probably get delivered either way. I mean, I can probably look up my tracking site on through my own web portal that I initiate, that I log into, right? So I imagine that the best case in those scenarios is just not to respond.
Yeah, I would say just delete them. Certainly don't respond. You can hit the thing to delete and block, or delete and report. Yeah,
Mhm.
isn't that a thing?
Yeah,
I've looked up to see how helpful that is with Apple. I'm not sure how helpful that actually is, but
sure, they're
either way.
battling scale.
Yeah, but yeah, your instinct is correct. Just delete it. Certainly don't respond to it. And like you said, you can actually look up your UPS account and find, or look up who you're expecting a package from. But like companies like that don't operate like that. They don't just
It's
send
not
random
one on
text from
one.
random. Right.
Yeah, and I can see, especially for older and a lot younger folks, how that can get confusing because there are services that are text-based, and if you're not paying attention, you make a blanket assumption that, okay, yeah, sure, I can respond over or message, but then you're telling the scammer, hey, I'm ready to be scammed.
Right.
Do you have any others you want to talk about?
So one of them that really kind of irks me a lot is it's called romance scams. It was
Oh,
on the list I think earlier.
romantic. Okay, tell me tell me more.
So when we talked about emotions before, so this is one, it preys on people's loneliness, which I think is just sad. The worst example of these are like elderly people who might be widows or widowers or widowers. They've lost their life partner, and they're simply alone and lonely. Like they might have had kids who've, they have their own lives now and their own kids maybe, or they've moved to a different place, and they're just alone. And so fraudsters will find out about these people. They'll try to connect with them to further victimize them. And because they're lonely, they're actually probably more susceptible to this connection because they might be yearning for some sort of a human contact. And they're called romance scams, but they actually don't always have to be about romance. Like a fraudster will pretend to be whatever person or relationship or friendship or whatever it takes that's going to lure you in to become a victim, and then to continue that to keep sending them more and more. So they'll keep that relationship going, and it's horrible.
Yeah, that's really sad. I feel like another way to look at that is just companionship, right? We could call it companionship scam. That's a long word
Yeah.
though. But that is so frustrating. I mean, we've always known of what's the classic word, catfishes out here, but this is a very targeted version of that where there's an objective in mind. And I don't even want to think about how these people got this information and how that's aggregated and used in these wide scale scams.
Yeah,
Really awful.
it is. It's horrible.
So
Yeah.
what do we do about that category of scams or companionship scams or imposter scams in general?
So all of them, really have the same characteristics that I talked about in the beginning, and I think that awareness of the scams is going to get us most of the way there. So and I really hate to tell people that they need to be skeptical about everything around them,
Mm,
but in some ways, I think that that's what I'm offering is if you're aware of the possibility and you're skeptical about things that come to you, then if something seems off just a little bit, it probably is.
yeah, surely. I mean, there's no semblance of victim blaming here, but you have to
Yeah.
arm yourself a little bit, right? So can you give me an example or more guidance there?
Well, so the original list that I talked about, talked about something being unexpected, and it creates a sense of urgency and a person with authority and stuff like that. So if you get something, you get a phone call, a text message, an email, it's unexpected. You should immediately be suspicious.
Mhm.
And now, obviously unexpected real things are going to happen to you, but
Yeah.
so just be suspicious from the beginning. So the next question that you should ask yourself is, how can I know that this is legitimate?
Mhm.
And the question is usually easy to answer, and it's like kind of directly proportional to the importance or the value of the things in question. So if you get a call from a number that says it's your granddaughter or something, just like what call them, like reach out to your friend or your granddaughter or your relative through whatever normal communication channel that you
Kind of
use.
like
Text
two-factor
them, call.
authentication in a way, but for other people.
Exactly. Right. Don't believe just because somebody says I'm your granddaughter. And people might be thinking, well, I'm not going to be tricked into believing that somebody else is my granddaughter when they're not. I know this person. I know them
Anyone's
my whole life.
vulnerable, you know?
Well, they are, and we've talked on previous episodes about AI and machine learning and stuff like that. And there are technologies that can do a really, really good job of faking being somebody else. They call them like deep fakes and stuff like that.
Mm.
And I hate to say that, be skeptical. And just to offer an example, my wife is somewhat used to this now. Like if she texts me and says, "Hey, what's the password to our password locker," or something like that, she knows darn well the next question that she's going to get from me is some. I'm not going to say what it would be, but
Not your own
I'll
security
ask her a
questions on here.
question. I'm going to ask her a question that only she's going to know the answer to. And she's just going to roll her eyes and like, there's John with his cybersecurity stuff, and she'll
Yeah.
answer the question and confirm for me that she is who, and that's not somebody who's just stole her phone or something. But the same thing, if your bank calls you, it's probably not your bank. That's not what banks do. And what you can do to verify it is just call them back using a method that you've looked up yourself.
Mhm.
So if somebody sends you a link to something, don't trust the link. You can go to your own Google and find the link to your own bank and then call them using the number that you verified yourself.
Right.
So if you get a message from your bank, it's probably best to just delete it and move on. if you're worried about being like, that's just rude, just hanging up on somebody,
Mm.
it's really okay to be rude to fraudsters. So if something, you got to trust yourself. If you think that something is off, it probably is.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's that simple. It might be a teeny bit more work in some cases, but a lot, a little to pay for a lot of security, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. And people will often ask me if something is a scam, and most of the time I want to stop them before they ever tell me the details about what they're thinking is a scam, and just say yes. If it's
Yeah,
questionable enough for you to ask me about it, it is most likely a scam.
I
And
like that. Trust your gut.
trust your gut. Yeah, exactly. So, but there are exceptions to the unexpected thing criteria. And I'll offer as an example, a couple of weeks ago, I was away on vacation and I got an unexpected text message from my credit card company. And it was very specific. It said, we just denied a transaction for, listed the name of a website, I think it was in Taiwan, for $1,200. Did you make this purchase? And it just offered, the only thing it offered me was to answer the question yes or no.
Mhm.
I said no, and it said, okay, thanks, your credit card has been disabled. We'll send you another one in the mail, which actually caused a problem for me because I kind of needed that credit card in the moment, but
Yeah.
it was okay. I appreciated that they were protecting me. So in this case, it was something that was unexpected. It did have a bit of a sense of urgency, but the only thing it asked me to do was answer a simple question, yes or no. Did you make
Wasn't
this
like,
transaction or not?
yeah, confirm all of your social security number digits, or,
Yeah,
go to this link and put in this information because,
right.
dang well, that's not the source you need to be putting that information in.
Exactly. So the exact same thing could have happened. And if I got a follow-up saying like, oh, now we need you to confirm who you are, of giving us your credentials and stuff like that, that would have, become red flags for me. So I think you just have to be skeptical. So
Question
yeah.
everything, trust no one, and live in a hole in the ground with no technology or light or interaction with other human beings. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and I don't want people to come away from that because I don't think that we should live in fear, and that's not the message that I want to convey. I think we
Mm.
just need to be aware and cautious. So we just don't trust everything that comes to you. If you approach everything with awareness and you're willing to be skeptical, you'll protect yourself from most of them. But thankfully, and I think you'll agree with me when I say this, Rachel, the world is mostly made up of kind and compassionate people. And so the
Agreed.
bottom Thank you. But the bottom line is, so don't let your awareness of possible scams tarnish your outlook on the kindness of others, please.
Yeah.
But don't allow your outlook on the kindness of others to cause you to become a victim of scams.
Agreed. I mean, I'll just add that there's really only so much that institutions can do and that you can expect them to do to reliably
Right.
prevent these sort of scams. I mean, it's a cat and mouse race. As soon as a new technology comes out, it might be weaponized in some way that no one's really
Yep.
seen or anticipated and responded to. And I think the last mile that, we can close on this gap comes down to how humans interact with the world. And like you said, being
Yeah.
skeptical, trusting there's usually good intention, but just doing, the extra box check to verify.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just be careful.
Well, I think that we covered this one pretty detailed, but I know this could be its own series because of how
Yeah.
deep and
Yep.
complex these scams go. But thank you for sharing your research and your experiences about this, John. I learned a lot today and I'm looking forward to our next episode.
Yeah, me too. And, thanks everyone for listening and stay tuned for our next episode coming soon.